Bienvenido, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tropical Bets Ahora with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, and we always like to start by saying hello to our wonderful friends tuning us in on Channel 82 in Bermuda. We love the good, beautiful, lovely people over in Bermuda. And by the way, if you're tuning in for the very first time, TBA Tropical Bets Ahora, it is a very fast-paced sports gambling, sports betting show. We cater to a lot of the demographic, the geographic in Latin, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and of course, Bermuda as well. And we always encourage you guys. We always encourage you guys to get social with us. It's very easy to do. We're going to pop that up in the lower third in a moment. But before we get into the betting, and some of the picks. And we had a very good weekend last week, and especially Premier League. We hit on a couple matches. Same thing with boxing. We're going to switch it up a little bit this weekend. We're going to give you some football slash soccer plays, some boxing plays. We're also going to creep into the States, talk a little NFL. Week 4 is among us in the National Football League, as they like to say. But TBA, Tropical Bets Order, is always for entertainment purposes only. Gambling problem, 1-800 gambler. So, as I did mention last weekend, very busy. I mean, extremely, extremely busy weekend when we're talking about what's transpiring, what's going on the pitch. And that's kind of where we want to start this edition of Tropical Bets Order. And I'm telling you right now, there is some value in these plays. It's a little different with some other sports, but I always like to preach this concept when we say, do your homework, shop around. You hear that a lot. The sharp bettors, they'll sit there and say, shop around, shop around. And maybe the novice bettor is thinking to themselves, what the heck does that even mean? Shopping around. Well, it means finding value depending upon what app or sports book you're using. There's value in some of these picks. For instance, if Man U is plus 160 at one book and then you catch him at plus 180 in another book, then obviously there's value in that second book at 180. So shop, 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 shop around, right? We love bargain shopping. You got to do the same thing when it comes to sports betting and gambling as well. All right. So with that being said, EPL plays for the weekend, 12:30. Let's kick it off, right? Saturday, Brentford versus the aforementioned Man U. BM is at plus 240 on the money line. Now, draw sits at plus 275. Man U is at plus 104. Now, you talk about momentum. Manchester United, they're trying to build that momentum. Third league win in 4 matches. And again, this is the early kickoff. Both clubs are sitting in the bottom half of the Premier League table. So to me, this is one of these matchups that it's very crucial. It's utterly important for both sides, respectively. The Red Devils, as it stands, currently occupying 11th place with 7 points from 5 games. Meanwhile, Brentford find themselves in 17th, only 3 points behind them. So you talk about some of these tougher fixtures on the horizon for both teams. Securing a result here really can go a long way. Couple plays in this one. Total goals over 3.5. So if you believe these two teams will combine and the final result is 3-1, 4-0, 2-2, 3.5, you're going to play the over on that and you'll get that at a plus 155 value. So again, you're laying 100 and you're winning back 155. Love that value to start things off. I really do. I love that value to start things off on this edition of Tropical Bets Water. And we're going to stay with that theme. Total shots over 26 and a half. I mean, I'm telling you right now, that's way too many. This is what I call a lookie, but I don't touch. Manchester goalie total saves over 3.5. I like that play, especially if you think this is going to be a high scoring one. Plus 195. Brentford keeper total over 4.5. Plus 170. Not bad value. All right, one of the teams we played last week, Chelsea against Brighton. Chelsea right now, that's a 3 p.m. Kickoff on the pitch. Chelsea minus 115. It draws at plus 285. Brighton sits at plus 285. Absolutely head over heels. Google guy. I love that number. And here's the thing. You got to talk about Chelsea. They're going to go a different alignment. A lot of things at play in this one. They have to go a different alignment because they've got some injuries. They're probably going to go 4-2-3-1 formation. And again, that's kind of your stronger set, if you will. If you think about the player personnel, Joey Pedro is going to lead the charge for West London Club up top. Cole Palmer will miss this game for Chelsea. He's actually going to miss the next three matches due to a groin injury, which are always tricky. So now all of a sudden, when you think about the man behind the curtain, so to speak, their head coach Enzo Maresca, he now has an opportunity. You got to mix and match a little bit. So you're not playing with him, right? Because he aggravated that injury during Chelsea's 2-1 loss to Man U last week. Surgeries not on the table, but it's not off the table. But he's not going to be playing in the next couple of matches. Be that as it may. Now you got to kind of figure out a way. Let me mix and match. How are we going to replace Palmer? And I think one of the most preferred options is going to be André Santos, Brazilian. He would play alongside Moises Caicedo. Enzo's going to push forward. And again, you're talking about that number 10 role right now. And I think that can have a double benefit of helping out Enzo. Listen, we're talking about poor form right here. You got to get him closer to the goal. You got to push a little bit. You have to control the middle of the pitch. And you got options, but we're talking about a couple head coaches, just like we talked about last week with Crystal Palace and West Ham, where they were on the hot seat. So this is a huge matchup right now. And you think about this from the Blue standpoint, 6 in top flight table after their opening 5 games of the season. Now they've just had one defeat as well under this head coach. Chelsea drew that 0-0 draw with Crystal Palace in their first Premier League match of 2025, and then they were able to beat West Ham 5-1. We talked a little bit about the coaches on the hot seat last weekend. So to me, very tough play right here. Brighton, meanwhile, they're 14th in the table, having only registered one victory across their 5 PL games so far this season. But I'm telling you, right now, hey, I'm flying with the Seagulls. I'm going to back them to pull off the shocker in West London. I really am. I really am, because ultimately, look, it's a must-win for Chelsea, right? If you don't get all 3 points, I think the manager's going to be under fire. And kind of what we saw last week, as I mentioned, West Ham, Crystal Palace, a game that Crystal Palace triumphed 2-1. But I'm going to go with the upset in this one. Speaking of Crystal Palace, 3 p.m., that they'll meet on the pitch against Liverpool. Crystal Palace plus 125. Actually, pardon me, those numbers have actually risen. So we're talking money line, not a draw. Money line Crystal Palace at plus 285. So they go in as a very heavy dog in this one. A draw sits at plus 275, and then Liverpool is the favorite minus 110. So you are laying $110 or to win back 100. Now, there's a narrative floating around with Liverpool right now, right? Everyone believes, hey, you got the title already wrapped up. Here we go. Flying under the radar, unbeaten 5, had a couple late winners. Here we go. They're getting the job done. Yes. But I think this is a good matchup right here for Liverpool. Liverpool, they want to push the pace. They want to get some play for the midfield. They want to have guys running in space. And I think, again, this is going to come down to corners and free kicks. I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair. My score prediction, right, if we look at the Q metrics, I think this is going to be a draw. That's why I'm playing the under. Total number of goals sits at 2.5, but I'm going to grab that at plus 110. Little value for the buck. So, again, I'm laying 100. I'm winning back. I'm getting paid plus 110, 210. Not a bad way to go. Also, here's a number to play depending upon where you're laying your hat. Sky Bet, DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, in the States, out of the States. Crystal Palace, 2 shots on target in each half. They got to be clean shots, right, on target, on the net, plus 130. All right, let me give you one more game. Leeds United versus Bournemouth, Saturday, 3 p.m. Again, money line, Leeds, plus 110. You look at a minus 135 for Bournemouth, which is a tie, no bet. I'm going to explain that to you guys in a moment. Now, that is basically tie, no bet, draw, no bet, in essence, right? So you got your wager, your sports betting wager that removes the draw as a possible outcome. So if the match ends in a tie, all wagers are considered a quote push. You didn't lose, you didn't win. So your original stake is refunded. You only lose your bet if the team you backed loses the game. And I think this sets up very well for Leeds with a win right here. 2-1, by the way, with Sky Bet. And listen, BM's a fantastic team to bet on because Their style never changes. They're very consistent. It's clear they're trustworthy starters out there, and you kind of know what they're going to get. Now, here's the number to watch. In their last 14 matches where they've averaged pretty much 56% or more possessions, their record is 4 wins, 3 draws, and 7 losses. That is a small sample size, but that's an important sample size because BM can't force you into transitions. They become pretty much, it's an awkward pace and they're very predictable at times. But that's a pretty unique number and nugget to kind of keep right by your bedside to kind of keep you warm at night if the weather is starting to cool off wherever you're tuning in to Tropical Bets Ahora. So there's a look at some soccer plays on the pitch on this weekend. We're just cranking up on this edition of Tropical Bets Ahora with Q. Again, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We always encourage you to get social with us, and it's very easy to do. You can follow me on all social media accounts on X, formerly Twitter, at Rich Q on Q, IG, at Rich Q, TikTok, Rich Q on the mic, the YouTube channel, at Rich Quinones. And we always like to say special hello and shout out to the lovely, the gorgeous, the wonderful people tuning in on channel 82 in Bermuda. Check out the show notes too. And you can also follow the link right there in our graphic, and you can log on and you can see all their wonderful programming that they have going on, not only online, but of course on their YouTube channel as well. All right, we're going to take a quick time out. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk a little fight game. That's where the heart hangs for myself, little combat sports, little boxing. We had some really nice plays last week in a boxing. And if you remember what I said last weekend, you get value when you start to dive into title fights, because a lot of times if you can just figure out a way to at least maybe get that upset right by the underdog, there is substantial value. Sometimes you get that fluke knockout early on in a fight where you capture an astronomical number and you put a little more coin in the pocket. So we're going to talk a little boxing coming up. On the other side, we're going to mix in a little NFL, stateside, National Football League, the other football, week 4, and there is a ton of value with some of these winless teams. All right, keep it locked in Tropical Bets Ahora. Quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Tropical Bets Ahora. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. And don't forget, you're keeping us tuned in, locked in on Channel 82 in Bermuda. All right, let's talk a little boxing. A wonderful weekend when we talk about the sweet science, right? So you've got a stack card, Montreal on DAZN. It is just a all-female attraction. We have a couple of title fights. Kudos versus Clavel, 10 rounds for Kudos IBF women's strawweight title. So Kudos right now, Sol Kudos, is plus 265. So that tells you right there, 265 plus 265, positive number, big time dog. She comes in, she's 28 years of age. Clavel is 35 years of age. She sits at a very heavy minus 360 favorite in this one. So you are laying a lot to win back a little. As I mentioned last week during TBA, I always lean towards the dog in title fights because there's value, there's EV, there's profitability. So I'm going to give you the tail of the tape with this, right? Kudos is 10-0-2, 3 knockouts. Last seen in action, she won the IBF crown by split decision against Maria Sol Bansworth. Despite being the reigning champ, this is what we like to call a step up in class and competition against the 23-fight, 35-year-old veteran in Clavel, who's 21-2 with 3 knockouts. Now, the 28-year-old from Argentina has won 5 straights, 12 bouts, 79 rounds, 3 KOs. That is a very low percentage, which is expected. But Gross has scored 2 TKOs in her last 5 bouts during that streak. So she's got a little pop of late. Sometimes you just grow into your power, and male, female, whatnot. The power is the last thing to go. Now, I believe this one, there's a substantial amount of value. And if you want to get, as I like to say, a little, I don't want to say outlandish, but maybe you sit there and you think to yourself, oh, this is a sexy little play right here. You got to go kudos at plus 1400 via the TKO, technical knockout, or the knockout. She's going to work around. She's going to use her jab. I think she's going to come straight forward. Now, that might be tailor made for Kim Clavel, but Kudos is a very tough fighter. You look at the level of competition in Argentina, and again, do that. What you want with that type of information, especially from a boxing standpoint and from a betting standpoint. But there's a couple things that stand out, and it's one of the reasons that I think when we start to talk about the edge, right? We always talk about who's got the edge in this fight, right? You always hear the odds maker say, all right, who's got the edge? Who's got the edge? Who's got the edge? Clavel, former WBC light flyweight champ. Okay, fine. She's also coming off a unanimous decision, a UD against Annabelle Ortiz in February. Then we mentioned the Argentinian Kuros. And it was a hard fought last time out in April against Mauricio Barsmarth. That was a split decision. But here's the thing. There's a little more pressure now, I think, on Clarel because she's making her MVP, most valuable player debut. And again, she is basically the pressure is there, but now you've got the outsider, right? Think about it, the outsider right now, because Clavel is one of the new splashy signings that Jake Paul just inked for MVP. So if it's a close fight, you kind of know it's going to go to Clavel, right? Now you got the outsider, and that's why sometimes you got to root, you got to cheer, you got to push for the underdog. Kudos, because sometimes you can upset the apple cart. And I think there's a lot of anticipation to this. It's bubbling over. We've seen it a little bit. And I think the boxing styles in this one, when you start to talk about the power, yes, you might want to give the edge to Clavel. I think they carry both pop. The mental warfare, listen, you've got a 35-year-old, but she's got 35-year-old legs, right? As opposed to a 28-year-old. So you're talking about the amount of fights that Clavel has fought, nearly double the amount of fights that her Argentina counterpart has. But to me, I kind of throw that out of the window, right? Because I think if you're 28, like Kuros is, she's not going to have pressure, right? So now there's no pressure. She's playing with house money because she's going outside Argentina. So this is the first time in her pro career that she's going to fight outside of Argentina. And again, maybe that's a little tough, type of environment. I think this kid is tough. I think she's mentally tough. I think she's going to be able to weather the early storms. I don't see this kid getting knocked out. I think because of that value, we're talking about, you got to win the battle up front, the front foot. And a lot of people would draw to the experience of the veteran fighter in Clavel. But sometimes you got to go for the younger, hungrier fighter. I don't see this being a stoppage. I think this might go to the scorecards, but you never know. The kid might turn around at plus 1400. Do I believe this fight goes under 8.5? Well, if you are a proponent of Clavel with her punching power, then if you think she's going to get the Argentinian out of there early, then it's under 8.5, and that's plus 650. A draw is not happening at plus 1400 because, again, you go to someone's backyard, you don't bring anything to eat, you're already going to be asked to leave in about 15 to 20 minutes. Translation, you got the Argentinians that's going to give up a couple rounds early on. But I'm telling you, if she can stalk, if she can land some shots early on and press the action, she might be able to catch Clavel, and you might get that upset at plus 1400. I think it's going to be a fascinating fight to watch. All right, second one. As we kind of move it along. Same card, Naomi Valle, 14-0, 9 knockouts, 21 years of age. She's a rising star from Costa Rica. She's going to take on the 25-year-old Italian Federica Marquez, who's 6-0 and 1. You guys love the way I say that, don't you? 6-0 and 1. It's a major step up for her. I saw minus 425 for Valle is so heavy. If you can get a plus with a stoppage early, say the 4th or 5th round for the Costa Rican sensation, grab it. Other than that, I haven't seen much movement in this one. So I'm going to play it under 6. And if you have to shop around, you shop around, you find good value for the buck. All right, so you got a little soccer, you got a little boxing. Last time out, when we come back on the other side, we got to get into a little NFL. By the way, postseason baseball, Major League Baseball in the States. We're going to get into that next week with some of these series, whether it's the wild card and then obviously the divisional and the National and American League Champion Series. But that's in a couple more weeks, kind of play things out. But I want to get into a couple NFL plays because there's value. You don't need to understand American football to understand the value that I'm going to give you. And a lot of it has to do with the analytics. It has to do with who's trending up, who's trending downward, a lot of factors, injuries, weather. You take it all in consideration. We're going to break it down on the other side as we get set to close out another edition of Tropical Bets Ahora. Keep it locked in, channel 82 Bermuda. We'll talk a little American football. That's right, in my wheelhouse, American football coming up on the other side. All right, welcome back, everyone. This Tropical Bets Ahora, hosted by myself, yours truly, Rich Quinones, or Q. We like to say now you can catch Q on channel 82 in Bermuda. Always a special thanks to the good folks over there. And reminder that TBA Tropical Bets Ahora is for entertainment purposes only. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, so NFL Week 4, we already hit a winner on Thursday Night Football when we took a passing prop of Sam Darnold, who quarterbacks the Seattle Seahawks, over 240 yards. We were able to get it 242. So what you're looking for with American football, the same concept, right? But the lines you'll see -2, 3, 4, 6. So a touchdown is valued 6 plus the extra point, 7 points. A field goal is valued at 3. Typically, they say you want to steer clear of 3.5 because that half, that means you need a touchdown, not a field goal. Field goal's only worth 3. 3.5 means I have to get more than that. That's a touchdown. So, kind of the theme to ease you guys into it right now, a couple games that I'm looking at. So, for instance, 1 o'clock on a Sunday in the States, Washington takes on Atlanta. Washington is going to be without their best quarterback, their starting quarterback. They're going to be without one of their top wide receivers. So when a quarterback goes down, the line moves. And it usually then favors the opposition. It doesn't favor the team that loses the quarterback. So in this case, Washington was favored against Atlanta. But now Atlanta is a 2.5 point favorite. So the line set where people believe Atlanta will win this game 20-17. 16-13, right? Because 16-13, there's 3, there's your difference. 2.5, you can't win by 2.5 points. You round it up, you win by 3. Atlanta's offense is not very good. So when we talk EPL and soccer, we talk about goals, over, under. We're doing the same thing here with points. Do you believe that these teams will score a combined 43.5 points? The answer to that is no. Because again, Washington's going to be out without their top weapons. Atlanta's offense is not very good. So I'm going to play the under. I think this will be a 20-17 type of game. I don't care who wins it, as long as they don't combine for more than 43.5 points. You follow me on that? I mean, it's once you get into a little rhythm or rhyme and you understand a little more, you'll get it. Um, Teams go on the road, which means they don't play at home. Sometimes the betters, the sharps, those that understand the analysis will tell you you don't want to bet a team going on the road that's laying X amount of points, right? And then there's a phrase, an expression called a backdoor cover, which means they might score late and they might cover the number, they might ruin the number, and it can ruin your bet. So with the NFL, with football, there's what we call player props. if I believe a quarterback will throw for X amount of yards, if I believe a running back will run for X amount of yards, if I believe a player will score a touchdown, that equals 6 points plus the extra point to get you to 7. And there's some good player props. They call them anytime score, anytime touchdown. But remember, if you play with a quarterback, he's got to run the ball in. He can't throw it. That's a passing touchdown. That's a different category, different value. Okay. So with all that being said, second game, Jacksonville against the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have dealt with some injuries, some players out, just like we mentioned Palmer and EPL, not going to be available. Injuries happen in the NFL. The 49ers still have a decent defense. They don't allow teams to get in the end zone a lot, but they are giving the opposition, in this case, Jacksonville, 3.5 points. So you're like, well, what does that mean? Okay. So if Jacksonville loses a game 20-17, they lose by 3. But if you bet Jacksonville, you got plus 3.5 points, which means the 49ers would have had to win by 4 points. So that's why people say, well, maybe I like Jacksonville in this regard. Well, that's not the case. I like the 49ers. I actually think they're a touchdown better than Jacksonville. I think they're going to be a team that beats them, say, at 23-16, which is 7 points, which means they easily covered their number at 3.5. Okay. The final game before we start to wrap things up on this edition of TBA, Tropical Bets Ahora, that will be the Ravens and the Chiefs. Okay, that's 425 stateside in Kansas City. Kansas City represented the AFC last season. They went to the Super Bowl. They got absolutely cooked, waxed by the Philadelphia Eagles. They got blown out. They are at home. They are not the favorite. The books are giving them 2.5 points. So the Ravens right now are favored by 2.5 points. Kansas City, their offense has had some issues, but I believe they'll be able to run the ball a little bit against a Baltimore team that's very susceptible to the run. Both teams come in at 1-2, 1 win, 2 losses. Both teams are desperate for a win. They can ill afford to lose their third game in 4 tries. It's just, that would not be good. So with all that being said, I do like Baltimore on the road because I think they're the more talented team right now than Kansas City. So that means I'm going to grab Baltimore. The 2.5, I believe Baltimore is going to win by more than 2.5. I believe they might win by 3, 4, 6. And then there's value in that. So just like we did with our boxing plays, just like we did with our soccer plays, you have to look. The underdog is always going to be the plus side. The favorite is always going to be the minus side. So you're laying more with the favorite to win back less. With the underdog, you can lay less and win back more. So just factor that in. As we mentioned, we call it shopping around, getting a vibe, getting a feel for it. All right, as we start to wrap it up, we want to remind you, we put the plays on social media at Rich Q on Q. You can also follow Tropical Bets Ahora on X, our YouTube channel. And we always like to encourage you that to remind yourself this is for entertainment purposes only. It's all about bankroll. If you don't have the money, do not gamble it. Be smart. Never chase your losses. Have fun. It's entertainment purposes. And as we close it out, always a wonderful thank you to our wonderful friends over and tuning us in, Channel 82 in Bermuda. Check them out online as well, Channel 82 as well. You can check out the URL. We'll put that in the show notes below. And again, we have a little saying in the States with back your play. If you say it, you play it, right? And if you back it, you're going to stack it. So with all that being said, have a wonderful sports weekend. Enjoy all the matches on the pitches. Enjoy everything going on combat sports-wise. Enjoy the Major League Baseball pennant races. Certainly everything going on stateside in the NFL. We will be back here next weekend for another edition of Tropical Bets Ahora. As always, I am your host, Rich Quinones, reminding you to get social with us at Rich Q on Q, X and IG, TikTok, Rich Q on the mic, and also the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q, at Rich Quinones. And please, 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 please follow the wonderful folks and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Channel 82 in Bermuda. With that being said, have a wonderful sports weekend. Be safe, be sound. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. This has been Tropical Bets Ahora. Hasta luego, buen día.